Node.js is a runtime environment that uses the V8 JavaScript engine. Node.js has everything we need to execute a program written in JavaScript. We can even use Node to create a HTTP server that will host a website. So the core of Node has a lot of functionality built in, but we're also able to add in extra functionality through the use of packages. NPN is the Node package manager. It provides a command line interface to enable you to manage the packages that you use in your application. NPN is also a registry of publicly available, reusable JavaScript software. So a package is a file or directory of files that is described in a package.json file. A package.json file contains information like the name of the package, the version, dependencies, the name of the author, any licensing information, amongst other metadata about that particular package. A module encapsulates related code into a single unit. A module is contained in a single file. Modules export an object of methods that can be used in an app. A module is imported into your app using the require keyword. As we can see example here, we would be including or requiring this express module and then saving that into a variable for use later on, and we can then use express dot some particular method to access the methods for that particular module. So we just mentioned Express there. So Express is an NPN package that allows us to create web routes. So it makes the methods of creating routes very easy compared to the default routing system. It uses utility methods and middleware through a robust API that is quick and easy to use. So what does Express.js do in the background? So first looking at what is routing. So a route is an application endpoint. This can be anything from serving a static HTML web page or an API endpoint returning some sort of RESTful data. So routing can be achieved by defining a request listener on a server object. A HTTP application listens for requests, and the request listener can then process those requests and send that back to the server or back to the client. Let's look at some code that creates a route using just standard Node modules. So to create this, we'll require 3 files. We'll have an index.js, which will be the web server, a route.js, which is a custom routing module, which we'll create, and an index.html, which is the file that will be served up once we have selected the appropriate route. So let's start with the routing module. So first, we need to include 2 core modules. The first one is URL, and the second is FS. So the URL gives us access to the URL resolution and parsing. The FS option provides an API for access to the file system. So next we need to create a function that will access a requested file and provide that data as a response. So we have to open the file on the designated path and try and read it. If that read fails, we respond with a 404 error. If the file is good, then we respond with a 200 response code and the content of the file. This response object is provided by the core HTTP module. A response.end must be called to signal to the server that the document is ready to be served back to the client. The point of the module is to handle a request from the server and to provide a response. So let's create an export for this module. The export is an object that contains the methods available to the application that require it. In this case, we're creating a method called handleRequest. If the path is the root level of the site, then the index file.html will be served, else an error will be displayed. So let's have a look at this running. So first in our terminal, we'll just check that we're in the right place and we have our files available. So first thing we want to do is to run the server. So to do that, we just do run node index.js, and you'll notice on our line here, we'll see that server has started. That came from that console.log command that we put in the index.js file. So our server's running. Now we can jump back to a browser and have a look and see what happens. So for this, we want to be going to our local host at port 3000. You can do this as 127.0.0.1 or localhost will both get to the same place. And if we do that, going to the root level, we should come up with our index.html file saying it works. If we tried to go to some other path, then we should come up with our message saying file not found. So let's start a Node.js server with Express this time to see the difference. So first we're going to want to initialize our npm project. So in here we'll do npm init. This will ask us a number of questions. So we want to know what the name of the package is. If we hit in nothing, it will take the default of what's there. This will be version 1. We could enter in a description here of what the project's about. The entry point, that will be the file that first gets run when we go to run this particular project. We'll use the default of index.js for the moment. Any test commands, if we want to do end-to-end testing. If we had this connected with a Git repository, we could put in a link to our repository. Any other keywords, who the author is, any licensing, and that will create our package.json file. So if we have a look now, we've got a package.json file. Next, we need to look at installing our Express module so that we can use that within our application. So to do that, we will type in our npm install Express, and we will use the save option so that it gets added into our package file as a dependency. And there we have it. We've now got our Express installed, ready to be used with our application. Now that we've got the environment set up, now we can open up our text editor. In this case, we'll be using Atom to create the files needed for the application. So let's look at the code now for doing this example in Express. So here we'll have two files. We'll have one, which is the index.html file that we'd like to serve, and the server that will do the serving. So the difference here, we'll notice that we are including the Express module, and we were also including, as before, the HTTP module. We'll create an instance of our Express object, and in this case we'll pass that instance of the Express object that will then do the handling of the response and request from the server. I'm doing the same console.log just to let me know that the server's been started. And then we'll see here, rather than having to write our own routing code, we can use the app.get method. It will be looking for anything that's on a path of /, which is the root level of the site, and the function which will handle that will send a response object which will grab a file which is the index.html. So it does a lot of the handling of all the file system and that stuff for you that we had to manage ourselves when we weren't using Express. So let's see this running. So first we need to start the server as we did before, running node.js, node index.js. So our server is started. We come to the browser, we run to localhost 3000, and we should get the message it works, which was the HTML code that we had asked it to serve back. We can add some extra information to make sure that we're getting the right thing. If we reload this now, we should get our information. So we're serving that file. If we tried to get something from a different path, then it will send us back with an error as defined by Express. So let's add another library into the mix. We've been using Node so far, which is a runtime environment for running JavaScript apps. So now we're going to use jQuery, which is a lightweight JavaScript library for use on the client side. So jQuery simplifies a lot of the complicated things we do in JavaScript, like AJAX calls and DOM manipulation. The jQuery library contains a number of features, which allows us to do HTML DOM manipulation, CSS manipulation, manage HTML event methods, effects and animations, AJAX calls, and other utility functions. So we can use jQuery on our client side to call routes on our Node.js server to get some data. Let's have a look at some code to do that. So starting where we left off in our last example, we'll add a link to jQuery library in the head of our HTML document. Okay, so we can reference this JavaScript file from a local install of jQuery on our computer, or from a cloud-hosted version of the file. So jQuery has a number of CDN, Content Delivery Network providers. We're going to use the one from Google today. So I've added in here the link to jQuery. So jQuery provides us with a callback function that allows us to know when it's been fully loaded and is ready to go. So the next thing we need to do is to add in a script to test for that. So we do script $. That $. Can also be replaced with the words jQuery if we need to, but in this case we'll use the shortcut document, and we'll be testing if it is ready, and the callback function for that, basically we'll put out a console.log just to say that we're ready. So this console log will be coming out into the console that we find inside our browser. So if we save that, we should be able to, we need to run our server first. Actually, first we'll go in and we'll add the other bits before we give it a test run. Okay, so now we need to create our AJAX GET request with jQuery that will provide us with an alert when our jQuery request has been loaded from the server. So now that our jQuery is ready to go, we can do a GET AJAX request, and we'll do it on a path of get data with a function that will return us data. And in here we will do a JavaScript alert, which will tell us that our data has been loaded, and we'll display the data. So when we're doing two strings, remember the plus means concatenation. If there was two numbers on either side, then it would do it as addition. Okay, so we've now included our jQuery script. We've checked that jQuery is ready to rock and roll, and we've done a AJAX request to a get data endpoint. When that returns, we will have an alert box pop up telling us what that data is. So now we need to go back and look at, and before we finish, let's close a tag so we don't get an error. Okay, now we need to go back and actually create that endpoint back on our server. Okay, so back at our server script that we had going, we need to create a new endpoint. So we want to do app.get, and this will be at get data. And callback function, which is going to have the request and response objects, and we will, in our response, send back, and we'll send back a bit of HTML. So we'll do a simple h1 hello world, closing our h1 there. So we've got a get request on this endpoint, and it will return, excuse me, a piece of HTML as the response. Okay, let's give this a run and see how we go. So first we need to start the server as we did before. So we'll go node index.js. Our server has started. Let's go back to our browser and go localhost. Okay, so our page is loaded. It did a AJAX request, and the response has come back in a JavaScript alert box with our data loaded, and it's passed back through the data that we sent. Okay, let's move this on just one more little step, and instead of doing the alert, we'll actually put that text back into our page. So let's come back to our index.html, and let's create a div which has an ID equal to message. So we just have an empty div there ready to do something. Up here what we can do is then, and this is the benefit of jQuery in being able to easily target elements on or nodes within our DOM, is using a selector type syntax to pick the node that we want to select, and we want to set its HTML, so .html property, and we'll make that equal to data, and we'll take the alert out for the moment. So let's save that. Because we've made changes, we'll probably want to stop our server and start our server again. Come back to our web page and reload the page, and so that we had it there. The initial part of the page came up. It then did an AJAX request back to the server, which collected the text for hello world, blah, blah, and then displayed it in the page. As a note for not having to stop and start node every time we make a change, there is another package you can download called node mon, and with this, every time we make or we save out this index.js file, it will automatically go ahead and restart the file for us, and that way we don't have to keep coming back here to restart this every time we make a change. Okay,